Right. Click, snap, and stack. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the GameUp Africa May Meetup. This is a monthly gathering of creatives, game designers, and all the cool people in the game industry. We come together every once in a month to learn from experts who have gone before us in the journey, and they come back to whisper what the future looks like. My name is Dorothy Orina. I'm the programs manager here at Melio Games, and I'll be your moderator for the evening. I'll be guiding you through an hour and a half of inspiring conversation from an industry expert, an exciting showcase, and a few surprises along the way. So let us have a look at what we have stacked up for us this evening. And before this, we did this fun quiz with our Discord community this week to try guess where our speaker this month works at. To see how much knowledge people have about people in the industry. And we had a couple of guesses. So we had Tetris, we had Unity, which is somehow correct. We also had screenshots of where people think you work, Thomas. So people have an archive of you. Then we had Lego. Somebody says they know you pretty well. And then we also had Harry, who got it right actually before Cephas. So shout out to you, Harry, for getting our speaker right. This month we have an exciting speaker, Thomas Winkley, who is the lead creator advocate at Lego, and he'll be taking us through navigating career transitions. We'll then have a game showcase by Binyam from Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. He's a digital artist and the founder of Dima Creative, and he'll be showcasing his game, Word Search. So sit back, relax, take your notes, and have fun during the session. We'll take all the questions at the end of each session. So if you have any questions, just jot them down, and then we will address them to the speakers when they are done. So without much further ado, I'd like to introduce Thomas Winkley, who is the lead creator advocate at Lego. Just give me a minute. Right. So Thomas is a game developer, a fighting game commentator, a community organizer, and an amateur pizza enthusiast, quite the range. And while he isn't figuring out the creative ways to build fun mechanics in Unreal, Editor, Fortnite, or other engines, you'll find him building a new Lego set or perfecting his dough recipe. Thomas, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you with us today. Take the lead.
Oh, hey, I'm here. Hello, everybody. Okay, I guess I'm going to rock this thing solo. So hi, yeah, my name is Tom, and it's good to see some of you all again, some of you all for the first time. Hello. And I loved seeing the quiz about me and folks posting screenshots of the work I did in previous careers. So yeah, it's great to be here. Something I think is really cool to talk about is what I do and how I've gotten to where I'm at, and, give you some career advice and some excitement. So let's jump right in. I will say most of the speaking I like to do is not like me lecturing at you unless we're doing something really technical and a deep dive. So I just like to kind of give you some tips and then answer questions, of course, for what I can and for things I can answer, of course. But I currently work at the Lego Group as a lead creator advocate, and we'll talk about how I got there and really what that is in just a second. So first things first, hi, I'm Tom. You already kind of met me and got some information about me, and all those things are true. I do love pizza. It's my favorite food. I cook pizza at least once a week. I have a pizza oven in my backyard, and that's one of my favorite things to do. So a couple things about me. I've had a lot of jobs. So I got my degree in Salt Lake City, Utah, where I grew up, in audio engineering. It's a degree of science. From there, I was a sales manager for over 10 years at various companies. I did sales management for a video game chain and then for a cell phone chain. After that, I did business sales where I sold business products, mostly internet. And then I became a content production coordinator where I helped creators learn how to make better content, specifically better learning content, and step-by-step tutorials, which is really, really, really fun. And then from there, I worked at Unity as an advocate for a long time. I worked on a lot of instructional design things, and that was really my first foray into the game industry, the games industry, I should say, where I taught myself C# and made a lot of friends in the space and started really applying all the content creation knowledge I had and all the video production skills and audio production skills I had to a technical thing where I could make videos about how to make games. And then just about 5 months ago, I moved to Denmark and joined the Lego group, where I work with our creators to talk about what they should build, how games can be built. We talk about technical stuff and also just work on building relationships and excitement about what we're building. So to add to that, let me see if I can click through here. My mouse is hidden from me yet again. Dun, 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 dun. There it is. So I think I already kind of covered what I work on, but a lot of what I work on and build is videos and training content and tutorials and guides to using technical things. So I spend a lot of time diving into new bodies of code and new projects, and then figuring out the best way to utilize them or partnering with the developers that are making them to make sure that they're taught and instructed correctly. And then, running educational programs as well. Well, supporting educational programs, I should say. So with that, I want to dive into what I think are the most important things to navigate a career. And actually, before I jump to that, I want to talk a little bit about some things that I really, really learned early on, and some words that I wish I would have had when I was just finishing college. And that was basically someone to say, it's going to be okay, just keep working hard and trying. And I know that's a very generic thing to say, but I think at the time, I remember graduating school. I was working full time, and I had spent, probably 40 hours a week working and 20 hours a week on college, 20 to 25 hours a week on college. And so I was just always going, always busy. And then I finished and got my degree, and there was just this open space in front of me where I was like, wow, I don't know what to do with all this free time. And from there, it became really clear that I could fill that time with other stuff. And so I still pursued hobbies and things I loved, even when I was doing other things that I didn't necessarily line up with my degree, but they were, the profitable things, or the things that were giving me the life I wanted at the time and were keeping me connected and happy. So with that, there's some tips that I have learned. So the first one is actually just be willing to learn. I know you probably hear that a lot, but it's really important in a career navigation to be willing to not know things and to be willing to just listen and learn. The hardest people to work with, I would say, are those that know everything and don't want to be vulnerable enough to admit when they don't know something. It can make things really, really hard. And also, if you find that in yourself, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means, it's a skill to work on. But I think that part of that learning and growth is really, really beneficial. And a learner's mindset will always help you and will always help you, expand and grow. So from there, I really recommend practicing receiving and processing feedback. And I think this is a really, really important tool, and it's something that you are always developing. And I think as you switch careers and industries and move around, it becomes a different type of skill set, and you have to kind of keep learning and keep pushing yourself on how to do that. I think for me, receiving feedback early on was really hard. And I would say you will find times when receiving it is more difficult than others. So I would say, right now I'm living in a new country and making a lot of new friends, learning a lot of new processes. And so it's a little harder for me to receive it right now because there's so much new data being processed by me all the time that it makes you a little more sensitive. And so I think being acknowledging of that and knowing that is also really important. And when I say process feedback, there's a couple of things I like to really focus on when it comes to the feedback side of the house. So processing feedback is good in a couple of ways. So the first question you should always ask is, what position is this feedback coming from, and what is the purpose of the feedback? I think that's the first thing you should really consider. And who is it coming from? And I mean that by, this is how you would process that feedback. So as an example, if you are doing a game prototype and you're showing the game prototype to somebody, and your prototype is a first-person shooter, as an example, and you're showing it to somebody who doesn't play first-person shooters, you should consider the feedback in that filter of, okay, well, this person doesn't normally play this game. Now, if that's your target audience, then cool. Like if you're building a shooter for folks that don't play shooters, then their feedback might be incredibly valid. But if you're building a shooter for people like that are hardcore shooter players, their feedback might be valuable in other ways, but maybe not to the core gameplay loop. And that's same with your life, right? If you are getting feedback about how you should approach your work, as an example, and that person doesn't directly affect your workflow or has never worked in your workflow, just, add that filter to it and then think, okay, well, what are they trying to do? How are they trying to help me? And what of this is valuable and how can I utilize it? And I think that also really helps you receive the feedback as well. If that person is a direct colleague that works with you all the time, then, you should think about that from that perspective. So filtering it, I think, is really important. And I think you can apply that to anything you're building, including prototyping, but you can also just to your life in general. And I think being receptive and open to feedback and acknowledging when you're having trouble processing stuff can be really, really valuable in a career loop. And I think some of the people I have the closest relationships with professionally are people that were able to give me really, really key, important feedback and kind of keep me on track. So, all right, this one I think is really, really, really important. It's treat everyone fairly and kindly. And I truly mean that. You don't have to be best friends with everybody you work with. And I would assume that in our lives, we don't always meet people we love and get along with everywhere, but you should still treat everybody with the same fairness and kindness that you would anybody else. And it's really important, I think, in the workplace as well. I really think it's about focusing on relationships and building those relationships, right? And you can give feedback to people in a way that doesn't hurt them, right? And you can build those tight relationships and find ways to really, really, really connect and help get them excited or help keep them excited about what they're doing, but help improve what it's doing, right? And I think that's really, really valuable, and that'll help you find ways to mentor people and be mentored as well. And I think on the fairly and kindly part, I want to reiterate that, like, giving somebody feedback that will help them or that will make what they're doing better, I think is a kindness, right? So giving that in a way that's really, really valuable is super useful. And on that same note, I really think it's important to think about who you know, and because you're treating everybody kindly and fairly and you're connecting and making connections, you never know where that person's going to be in 5, 10, 20, 30 years. And really, it's those relationships and that work ethic that comes through that's going to help you find those next positions and those next things, because people will remember you for what you did, and they'll want to work with you again, right? Again, always take this with a grain of salt. This shouldn't be like your number one priority. You shouldn't always just be the nicest. Like, of course, you have to establish your boundaries and make sure that you're getting a work-life balance and all those things. But, being kind and fair is really, really important. And as I was saying this, I kind of had a few other items come up in my mind that I didn't put on slides. But I think the other thing to really consider on top of, treat people kindly, take important notes. And I thought I had this as a slide, but it's not here. Oh, well. Oh, here it is. It's actually tied to be willing to learn. And as you're doing all these things, part of being willing to learn is no matter what you're doing. And as an example, those first 10 years of my life, I was a sales manager, and it was hard work. It was stressful work, but I learned a lot. And something that kind of clicked with me after 6 years maybe, is I realized that while I wasn't always loving what I was doing, I was learning a lot of really important skills. I learned how to deal with tense situations. I learned how to deal with confrontation. I learned how to have uncomfortable conversations with people. I learned how to talk to people I don't know in public settings. There's just a lot of things like that I needed to learn how to do. And I learned that working in, sales management and high pressure sales. And even when I was selling business internet, right, I learned how to just talk to complete strangers and start having those conversations and building those relationships. And that's something that really helped me in my production role when I was helping teach creators how to make content and keep them on a timeline. It also taught me how to process feedback back through a creator's eyes. And so take very, very deep technical feedback that was harsh and send it back to them in a nice, polite way. So these were things that really helped me kind of grow. And they're things that I, learned how to do over time. And also hello to everybody in the chat popping in. It's nice to meet you. But yeah, those are all things that have helped me get to this next part of my journey where I'm learning how to survive and thrive inside the Lego group inside Denmark, right? And it's been really fun so far, and I'm really, really excited to dive in more to what we're building as we work, towards helping creators make really, really cool things inside of Lego Islands in Unreal Editor for Fortnite. So those are really the big tips I wanted to put together. I didn't want to spend 45 minutes or 2 hours just talking to you about career things. But I will say that the biggest thing that's always benefited me is a learner's mindset. And I'll just reiterate that. And if I didn't know something, I think part of the games industry and being good in gaming is willing to push and challenge yourself. That's why game jams are so important. And when you do game jams, it should be either something you're kind of good at, or maybe take on a position or a role within the team of the jam of things you have no idea how to do, or you wanted to do, right? And always make sure you're spending time learning and challenging yourself. One of my favorite things to do learning inside of any kind of video game is when I'm playing a game, if I find a feature or I find it's like some functionality that I think is really, really neat, I'll usually write it down. And then like on the weekend or some downtime, I'll actually pull up UEFN and see if I can recreate it. Like, can I recreate this functionality? Because that's how I learn. I learn when I'm building something concrete that I can get excited about. And so that really helps me. So having those systems and recognizing them over time, I think is really, really important. So that's all I prepared. I didn't want to have like this huge rant about building and, this is what you have to do and this is how you have to learn. But I wanted to have like a quick conversation about tips and tricks and things I think are important. And then I thought from there, we could, if there was questions you wanted to ask, we could do some questions and take it from there.
All right, thank you so much, Thomas, for sharing the 3 great tips, right? Getting people to be willing to learn and being that person who wants to know things, practicing receiving and processing feedback, and also treating everyone fairly and kindly. I have a couple of questions for you. So we're going to do a Q&A because we still have a lot of time. And then we're going to also take in questions from the chat box. So people who are joining us right now, we are covering navigating career transitions. And this can look like you not being in the game industry and then transitioning into the game industry, or being in the game industry under a different department and then transitioning to a different department still within the game industry, but it's something that you didn't used to do before. Okay, Thomas, there's something I'm curious about, right? One of the greatest concerns that people have, especially when they are transitioning, is that companies will want to give priorities to people with prior experience in that particular thing that you are applying for. So how do you navigate this to make sure that you still have a competitive edge in such an application?
I think that's a great question. And I don't think there's any like one answer that can really tell you everything about this. Like there's not like one silver bullet, if you will, that solves this. But I would say a big part of it, or an important part of it, is thinking about how you challenge yourself and build in those areas. So as an example, if they're looking for somebody who, a lot of times they're looking for somebody who has done the task they're looking to do, right? They're looking to sort. And I think part of that can be, well, then do the tasks, whether that's spending some of your free time developing or building your own games, building your own indie titles, testing things, and make sure, from a developer perspective, you're uploading where you're building those types of things. So if you're a developer, right, make sure your GitHub is up to date and that you're pushing code to that GitHub, and you're not just documenting what you did, but also document what your challenge was and what you learned from that. And a lot of times that can really help the recruiters get through that portion of it. Participate in game jams, test your skills, get things built and shipped through there. And then beyond that, it really is about persistence. And sometimes finding somebody, getting that one opportunity and being willing to ask for the opportunity repeatedly, right? Like quite a bit. I'm going to turn a light on here. It's a little dark.
All right, awesome. Sounds good. Yeah. I can hear you.
Perfect.
Okay.
But yeah, I think those are the things I would really focus on, right? And don't be too hard on yourself. If you get told no a lot, it's hard to take rejection, but remember that you will make the transition. It's just about being dogged and persistent about what you're doing. So, bless you.
All right, thanks for that. You had a background in sales initially, and audio engineering, and then sales, and then you came into games, right? So in that process, are there any skills that you were using then that you ended up finding valuable when you joined the game industry eventually?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think from a skills perspective, there's actually quite a long list. I think I mentioned a couple of them, but a big thing was learning to talk to people that I didn't know became really, really important in my role as an advocate, right? Because part of what you do in advocacy is relationship building. A lot of the work I do also ties to my audio engineering degree. I record a lot of video and a lot of audio content, and I talk a lot about things that are getting built, and I do presentations and I travel, and all of those things are tied to either speaking publicly, talking to strangers, talking to new people, maintaining relationships, all the type of stuff that you actually would do as a salesperson. I do day to day and pretty regularly now, even though I'm doing, game development and technical advocacy. I'm still very much maintaining relationships and doing a lot of that sales process. The only difference is that I'm not actually closing deals, or I'm not trying to generate revenue based on a quota, but I'm still wanting to interact and keep those relationships with people. So I think those are huge. I think also there was a culture of accountability in sales that really helped me stay driven. And that's something that kind of carried forward, right? Of, okay, you have to hit these things. You have to make these numbers happen. And while it wasn't always the best and most fun I've ever had, not every job is the best and most fun thing. And there's always stuff you have to do in a job that may not be your favorite thing. And it really taught me to persevere through a lot of that.
Okay, awesome. Thanks. Do we have any questions? Don't let me ask all the questions, because I do have a lot. Okay, we still don't have questions on the chat. So let's continue this conversation, Thomas. I'm curious to know, is there anything that surprised you when you joined the industry, as well as is there any misconception that you think people have about working in games?
So I can only speak to my experience. I can't speak to, the whole industry, but I think for me, the biggest surprise was how much there is to learn and how fast it's changing and how fast the technology moves. It's rare to meet somebody who's an expert on everything. I would argue that it's almost impossible to meet somebody who's an expert on everything, because this industry moves so quickly. And I think on top of that, that really impressed me with how willing everybody working in this industry is to learn and how much they're constantly learning, right? There's kind of an exploration mentality, which is really, really, really fun. It changes day to day. There's always new tech releasing. Everybody's trying to optimize better, make better code, build better things. And I think to me, that was the most impressive thing to me, or the thing that caught me the most, is you see people speaking about technical stuff, or you go to these like really technical events and you see somebody talking about some really, really, really advanced topic. And that same person 10 minutes later will be like, oh yeah, I actually don't know anything about this other topic that's incredibly technical, because they're a specialist in certain areas. So I think to me, those were very surprising and also exciting to know there's so much to learn. So.
Okay, we have a couple of questions in the chat, so I'll just read them out.
Sure.
Mike is asking, what's the hardest decision you had to make in game development?
The hardest decision I've had to make in game development. It's a really good question. I don't know that I have one. I don't know that I've had one that was like the hardest decision I had to make in game development, but I can talk about two moments that I think were big decisions that kind of transformed my career a little bit. And I think it kind of ties to Emmanuel's question that just popped up about like what would decide me to make made me decide to make the transition. So I feel like my career's had kind of like two big flagship moments where something came up that seemed like too good of an opportunity to not pursue. but also it was really scary. And the first one was when I started doing the learning content and teaching people how to make content. There was a company that I got approached by that a friend was working for, and they basically needed somebody that could do all the relationship management, but then also understood how to record audio and video, right? They needed the two things at the same time. And it was a fairly new company. They seemed to be doing really well, but it was a startup. And basically I was leaving a comfortable job in a company I loved with people I loved. But this new thing was like using every skill that I had not been able to use at a job for a while. And it looked really interesting. And I took that jump. And that's where I actually learned game development. That's where I learned to code. That's where I learned even more how to make training content. I started getting classes on public speaking. That's really where this stuff started taking off for me. And then the second thing, big tentpole in my career, I feel like is just starting right now, where I decided to like leave my family, move from the US to a new country and start working at the Lego Group. Where again, it was scary. It was a totally new thing, but it's a really cool ecosystem. And it's putting me in a position where I have to relearn and learn a ton of things. And I think what really pushed me to make that decision and made me go, oh, this is what I'm doing, is the first time that I like actually made something happen in a game engine. I was learning at the company I was at, and I was making just a small prototype, and I wrote some code and I hit run, and I'm pretty sure I was just making a character move around when I pushed like WASD. It was really basic, but I fixed the code, I hit save, I ran it, and it just worked. And I got so excited. I just always wanted to chase that excitement again, basically. Like, that's when I realized, like, oh, this is actually what I should be doing. Like, I have never been this excited about anything at work before. This is clearly what I need to be doing. So that was kind of the moment for me that kind of moved me into this path.
Maybe I can do a follow up on that. When you're doing the switch, right? So how do you know when to stay the course or when it's time to pivot?
Oh my gosh.
Especially when it's conflicting.
Yeah, that's a really conflicting question, right? Because there's not always a perfect time, to be honest. Like, and I'm one person, to be fair, and like I am not an expert by any stretch of the imagination in anything, but there's times when everything just kind of lines up enough. And I'm a pretty risk adverse person. Like, I don't like taking risks. I like to make sure everything's comfortable. It's just not like risks are not in my wheelhouse. So for me, I really look at something as like a risk reward type of conversation of, well, how dangerous is this to me? Like, if I make this change, do I have a landing point? Do I have a fallback? Where can I go from here? And the one thing I will say is, if you're over that risk threshold for yourself, or it's relatively safe, you should absolutely take it, especially if you think about it more than you don't. If you look at something and it looks too good to be true, that might be your gut telling you it's wrong. But if you're like, 75% of what I see is like good and it's safe and it looks great, and there's 25% of risk that I'm not like really into, that might be an indicator that it's probably worth taking. But I don't know if there's any like clear-cut answer. Hopefully that answers your question a little bit. It's a hard one to answer, but like, I think it's like you have to just assess the risk and then look at what's going on. And I'm a research person, like research what you're looking at. And I think, and honestly, sometimes something comes up and you just feel like you should do it. And if that's the case, you should never fault yourself for chasing something you feel is good. So.
You mentioned that you are risk averse, but you ride a motorcycle, so that's very ironic. Yeah. Two sides of the scale. Yeah. Max is asking how you started as a game developer, which you've mentioned, right? And thanks for mentioning that feeling. I think every time you start on a technology and something works, it's always super, super exciting. So maybe you can answer now from that moment when you did that code, that prototype, and it worked. How did you get to further your skills? What methods did you use? Did you get to a course? Give us how that looks like.
So I learned a lot of stuff. So my first journey was the company I was working at. It was a tech company called Pluralsight, and they had like online learning. So I actually was watching probably 10 to 15 hours of video game development videos a week, all about creating in game engines, about creating in Unreal, creating in, I think at the time we were only making content on Unity, Unreal, and maybe 2D Game Maker, I think, were the three we were really doing. Was it 2D Game Maker, I think it was called? And so I was watching a lot of content there and learning. I was watching content on 3D modeling, on rigging, on texturing, on coding. And then I really started figuring out how to read documentation and looking for educators that really, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like educators that really resonated with me. So I think one of the cool things about the internet is that there are people teaching stuff all over the place. And if you don't link with somebody's teaching style, you can generally find a different teaching style. I was also really lucky to have some amazing mentors that helped me out. Joy Horvath, Joshua Kinney, Eddie Russell, Justin Marshall, just to name a few of people that were already really experienced that I could reach out to and ask questions. And I think that's another thing about the game industry I think is really cool is most developers are really happy to explain something to you if they have the time. And if you come with a learning mindset. And so I was really lucky to be surrounded by teachers and people that wanted to teach. From there, it really came down to watching community content and reading documentation. Like now with my job currently, I spend probably 30% of my time reading the Epic Games development notes and reading about Verse and Unreal Editor for Fortnite and all the different things it can do. And that really became like my learning journey. And if I really, really, really deeply need to understand something, I go back to my roots of, okay, what do I want to do in UEFN? What are the 3 things I'm going to do and how do I build that? And that's kind of the rotation I take.
Emmanuel has a follow-up on this.
Yeah.
Did you have to invest to learn, or did you utilize the free resources online?
Did I spend any money? I think the only thing I really spent my actual money on to start learning was making sure that I had like something I could develop on, like a computer. And then from there, I think I paid for my Unity certification. One of my first game dev certifications I paid for, but everything else I was taking from the resources that the developers and the engines were making, right? All the engine manufacturers have a great learning resource set. And they want you to learn. We want you to come join this industry, right? And so I spent a lot of time watching a lot of content. And most of it was, prevalent YouTubers that had really good reviews that I knew or had been recommended by other people in the industry. And then a lot of documentation on Epic Games website and any other engine website were kind of the ones I focused on the most. So I didn't really spend a ton on like learning courses, even though there are some really good ones out there. I think, again, it comes down to motivation. Sometimes spending money is the obstacle you need to ensure that you will do the thing. And I fully acknowledge that. Like some people aren't invested unless they like put a little bit of money down or a little bit something to, hold them as a motivator. I had other things holding me as a motivator, like people telling me, hey, you need to get this certification by X date. So I had different deadlines pushing me for that. But yeah, I think most of my learning now has been YouTube, docs, and the learning content made by Epic Games or their competitors.
Okay, awesome. I think we missed a question here from Emmanuel. How exposed are you to content that is games coming from within the African continent? And what is your view of what has been done right and what can be done better?
I don't know that I'm really qualified to answer that question. I have seen some work from Africa, and I have seen some really, really cool stuff from Africa. I don't know that I could say what has been done right and what has been done better. I don't think I could advise on that. What I would say is that I think the world needs to pay more attention to things made from like Africa and things made from other countries, because I think there's really, really, really cool stories to tell. And I'm excited to see what those are and get into them. But I don't know that I have like a what could be better, what could be worse type situation. But I do know that the things I have been shown from Africa, I have found to be really intriguing and really exciting. So I think I'm just actually more excited to see what else comes, if I'm being honest.
Okay. Emmanuel, maybe you can create the next amazing thing, right?
Yeah.
One more question for you, Thomas.
Sure.
Did you face any significant challenges when you joined the industry, and how were you able to overcome them? And with this, maybe you can answer, because one of the greatest challenges that people face is imposter syndrome. Did you get to face this yourself, or is there a way or a method that you can advise somebody going through that to overcome it?
So I suffer from imposter syndrome incredibly a lot. And I think it's a pretty high number of people that do. I think it's called the Dunning-Kruger curve, I think is what it's called, right? The more you know, the more you realize you don't know anything, I think is the general idea. I can't tell you that I'm super great at managing it, but I can tell you things I do to help. First of all, I generally do what I call reinforcement checkups. I don't know if there's a good name for them, but like I tell my boss about this, I tell my colleagues about this. I literally say, hey, y'all, like I have anxiety, I get stressed, and also like I have imposter syndrome. So every once in a while, I'm just going to come to you and say, how's it going? And I need you to just be very direct and tell me how it's going. And that's kind of how I manage it. And then from there, what I actually do is I then kind of try to walk myself through like a process of, okay, they just gave you that feedback. And now your anxiety brain is going to tell you that they were just making that up so they didn't hurt your feelings. And so now you got to walk through that process. And I generally then take myself and go, okay, cool. What did they say? They said this. Have they ever led you astray before? No. Is your brain being a jerk? Yes. And then I kind of have to have that dialogue with myself. But I would also be open to any tips anybody has, because I think a lot of us suffer from it. And I think it's the type of thing that you have to kind of just reinforce to yourself that you are where you are for a reason. And I think also, if you don't have a little bit of it, then I get worried that maybe I'm not trying or I'm not caring enough. And that scares me. The other part I would say is go and look at what you were doing a couple years ago or a year ago or 2 years ago and see if you see growth and improvement. And if so, then that shows that you were going the right direction. So I think, I think of projects I made 6, 7 years ago, and I go back and look at the code and I go, oh, wow, I can code so much more efficiently than that. Or, oh, I can solve this problem so much more eloquently. Or back then I only knew one language and now I know 2, like all the things, and like really checked what you've learned and give yourself an honest assessment. I think that really, really helps. But those are the best tips I can give you. It's something I think a lot of us deal with daily, and it's just something you can kind of work through. And if anybody in the chat is like, actually, I have this one perfect solution, please type it out, because it would be helpful for a lot of us.
For all of us, actually, yes. But I also need to open up the perspective to, like, if you're applying for a job, you're not the only person undergoing a difficult situation, because recruitment in itself is a very difficult process. And for a team of people to actually go through this whole lot of people that applied and choose you, then you're very qualified for it, because you passed through that very tiny funnel and went through. So you can also remind yourself that. And as well, you've given us great tips of keeping in check, right? And that will also probably include something like journaling, or making sure that you are tracking where you're at different steps, because it might be difficult to, it's very easy to forget, right? Especially if you're anxious, you try to remember and you keep bringing yourself down. So just keep in check with yourself to know where you're at the different points. Do we have any further questions for Thomas?
I do need to see that. I see my friend Max in the chat. What's up, Max?
Yeah, shout out to you. Okay, awesome. If we don't have any questions, then that will be it for this. We're going to move on to the next phase. Thank you so much, Thomas, for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you. And thank you for sharing your journey from sales to audio engineering and now to game development, working at Lego. It's been awesome having you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, y'all. Good luck with your games and what you're building, and I'm sure I'll see you again soon. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye, Thomas. Thank you. Okay, great. So that was our speaker session, and we're now going to move on to a game showcase. And today we have Binyam from Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. He's a 2D and 3D game artist, and he has a game which is created with his studio Dima Creative, which he will be showcasing. Binyam is an architect, so he's an architect of both buildings and games, with over 10 years experience in in design, animation, and digital media. He founded the Dima Creative Company and works as the creative director at Guzo Technologies. He specializes in mobile apps, video game development, 3D modeling, and digital illustration with a passion for blending art and technology to create engaging experiences like this Harik word search game. Binyam, thanks for joining us on the call today. I'll give you the stage to share your game with us.
Thank you, Dorothy. Hello, can you hear me now?
We can hear you perfectly. Can you add your screens? I can't see them yet. Perfect.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me today. Like Dorothy mentioned, I'm going to show you the currently project that we are working on. My name is Binyam Mage. I'm the founder of Dima Creative Company. Let me just give you a brief about the current project that we are working on. It's called Kala Chawata Word Searching Game. As a start, do you know there's like 86 indigenous language in Ethiopia? Like one of the main spoken language in Ethiopia is Amharic. It's like it have like 33 million native speakers, and like it have like 25 million users. They use Amharic as their second language, and this script is developed like the 4th century. The amazing part about Amharic language is it have like 34 base consonant characters, and as a vowel character, it have like 238 characters, individual characters. The total number of characters that used for Amharic languages around 280. And as a child, as a growing up, it was difficult to memorize all the different characters and understanding, creating different words with that consonants without that characters. And that's the idea we try to build it as an app. These all of the characters that used to speak Amharic, to write Amharic. This is all the characters you need to know. And as you see, the number of the characters is very large. That we call it abogida. It's a fiddle. As growing up, there is no technology that you use to learn Amharic in an easy way. So that's why we try to develop this kind of mobile app. People can use it easily to learn new vocabularies, Amharic words, with having fun and accessible ways. And like to keep your mind while learning, just having fun, just having a feedback, having a sound, having a gamified experience might make the experience more easier for people to learn. And as you see, it's celebrating Amharic language. It's called Gaze script. Just to give you an idea, let me show you the gameplay experience. As you see, it's like there is a lot of games like this that use the word crossing mechanism that you can see like for mostly you can find it for English, for learning English. That's why we try to use this kind of mechanism to learn Amharic. Like currently we have developed like 300 levels, and this is how the game looks. The core gameplay loop is a player receives grid of boxes that he can use for using different characters, just moving around and creating different words. When you correctly rearrange the characters, you can pass to the next level. You can request for help. It can give you some words, and you can use that for to generate the fully engaged words. Depending on the levels, the difficulty level will be increased. That will give you the joyful and experience. Currently, the win and lose conditions, we have integrated the winning part. You have to fill all the words to win and earn the coins and collect the birr. For losing condition, currently we haven't added the losing conditions. You can play it whenever you like. You like relaxing, stress-free experience. You can play as long as you can figure out the questions. For this project, we have used 4 phases. The first phase, ideation and planning, prototyping, UI and UX design. As I mentioned, this kind of games have been created different times. We have looked a lot of games and trying to figure out how we can add this kind of features to make it more fun and easily created. Like I mentioned, the character is so wide in Amharic, so we have to choose simple words that people will understand easily to play it. On the second phase, we fully developed the product, and we try to add the contents like the labels, and we try to build the first version and try to test with people and try to see how it's going. People can play it easily, and after we test it for the first round, we try to publish it as soon as possible, because we have to see. In our studio, we plan that we don't have to hold the games as soon as possible. Like if the people use it more often and we can receive more feedbacks, we can iterate on that idea more. And in the third phase, we mainly focus on bug fixing and optimization, the size, and adding more sounds and effects to make that experience. In the fourth phase, we try to market the materials. We try to use social medias for promotions to make better engagement. The future plan of the Kala Joata games, we're trying to add more categories and levels to create a long-time experience on the mobile app. And we try to introduce time challenges to make people think a smaller time, to make it more challenging. In the third, we try to launch it in iOS version. In the previous projects, we tried to publish it on iOS. It had some longer time to publish the issue, but for now, we're planning to put it for further time. In the fourth part, we planning to partner with for educational companies located in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, because as I mentioned, there is a lot of language in Ethiopia. Amharic is one of the language. As I mentioned, there is around 86 language. Around 4 or 5 language are more of there is a lot of native speakers. And just to give you an idea about our company, it's called Dima Creative. It's a digital agency company based on Addis Ababa. We are more of dedicating developing mobile apps. We have published around 20 mobile apps and games, like you can see around here. We have more than 1,050 downloads. And just to show you some of the mobile. The first one that you can see, it's Ito Heads Up game. It's Heads Up game in Amharic version. Like people can play it on parties or engagement times to make more fun and memorable time. Second most other jump. Second type of mobile apps that we create is recreating Ethiopian traditional music instruments. Just you can play it on your phone. It's like one of we have around 4 instruments in Ethiopia. Bagana is one of it, and it's you can play it on your phone, just like real instrument. One of our biggest apps that have a big download is Jota. It's like a quiz game that you can learn about Ethiopia and all over the world. It's mainly it's in Amharic, and people from Ethiopia they can play in Amharic questions and answers that they can learn more. This is the team currently. Biniam, Isaac, Yared, and Sahan, and this is what. Thank you. If any of you interested in our company, can contact us and we can work together.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Binyam, for presenting your game, for showcasing your game. I understand that you've made about 20 games which you've published, and I'm curious to know what are some of the lessons you learned from the other games that you improved or that you used to make this game better, as well as what did this game teach you that in your next game you'll have to change or switch up things?
One of the biggest things that I've learned is I tried to mention it before, like when you have some idea about some game, I think it's really better like if you can publish it as soon as possible, because if you spend more time on that game and when you publish it, maybe the audience is not something they are interested on. If you can see their engagement and if you can see their idea, maybe you can put your more time and energy on that project to make it perfectly accepted by the audience.
Okay, awesome. I see most of your games are cultural based. How does the reception look like for people outside Ethiopia?
Yeah, we are getting nice feedbacks from different peoples. Like I mentioned, we're trying to make it more easily for people to find it, because if we can create a game that's already made, it won't be easily foundable on the Play Store. Like I tried to mention, we are trying to find some niche that's not be created. It will be easier for Play Stores to be easily found in games, because of every day people publish different games, more games. It's getting more harder to be visible on that category.
All right, thank you. Michael is asking, what engine or software do you use for your games?
For the project that I've shown you now, we used Unity.
Okay. Yared also mentions that you've used native Android. Is that for other games?
Yeah. For other projects, we use native Android, like Flutter.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for answering that. Do we have any other questions? Put them on the chat. In the meantime, Binyam, what was the biggest challenge you faced while developing this particular game?
For this particular game, we have to make it, as I mentioned, the characters so large, and we have to make it easy for people to guess the words easily. In Amharic, you can use with 2 characters to create many different meanings. So we have to make it simple and joyful words to make it more engaging.
Great, thank you. Michael has another question. How do you monetize your games?
Currently, we integrate different mobile ad modes. People will see different ads on the bottom of the game, and if you want to have some hints or helps from the game, you will see some advertise. That's how we try to generate some income from the mobile apps.
Okay, thanks for answering that. Given that you have a background in arts and you ended up founding a studio, what would you say to young creators who want to set up an indie studio? How does that path look like, and what is the opportunity in the African game industry?
That's a nice question. But for me, I try to, as the technology is getting more easier for people, we have to try to make something like original and unique by having a different knowledge. That's how we on creating mobile games. You have to understand a lot of things. Like you have to understand sound, you have to understand design, you have to understand how it's going to be easier for people to have a good time. The knowledge that I've collected from different experience helped me a lot to create something engaging.
All right, great. Michael is asking, what would you say is your most successful game? Yared, since you have the links, you can also drop a link to the game in the chat for people to try out. Binyam, you can answer. What is your most successful game as of now?
As of now, the successful product of ours is the instrument simulation apps that we created are creating a lot of engagements because there is no other like the apps that I've shown you, the Bagana. We have created another app, Play Krat. We have created another product called Masinko. It's an instrument that you have to have a physical in Ethiopia. There is no other virtual simulation mobile apps. So those apps have a good engagement.
Okay, great. So we have another question, but before this, maybe you can answer, do you only develop mobile games? Then if you can answer this, are desktop games profitable?
For now, we are only developing mobile apps and games for mobile phones. We are not publishing on desktop. This is what I answer.
On PC.
Yeah, on PC.
Right. But to answer this person, the different platforms have different ways to monetize. So you can particularly seek advice from somebody creating on one platform to advise on a different platform. If you are interested in creating desktop games, maybe you can find somebody or do research on how desktop games get monetized. People play differently, and the monetization channels also look different. So you can check that out online. Do we have any other questions to Binyam? Yes. What's the market for games in Africa currently, and what's your advice? So you can answer this from your own perspective and what you've experienced, and how you'd advise somebody else wanting to monetize their games.
Okay. I think for the to give you for the previous answer, mobile phone is I think more profitable than desktop mobile desktop games and products. I think currently people are in Africa, especially most of the people are owning a mobile phone. I think it's getting easier for people to download and use your apps or games on their phone. I think this kind of product may be more profitable. As you mentioned, creating a unique and original product as an African, I think the market is really open for this kind of products. As you have seen our products, we are not that much marketing our products, but getting more visibility because we're trying to focus on the quality now. Like I mentioned, big companies not focusing in this African market. So as an African, if you can focus on this kind of market, the profitability and the users are needing this kind of product.
All right, thanks, Binyam. I've sent a link to the chat. Whoever wants to learn more about how the African games industry looks like, who the players and who the players are, and what people are using, you can check out the Africa Games Industry Report that Malia Games worked on this year. So this is the 2025 report. It will give you insights on what has been happening on the continent last year. Right. So if you want the stats, if you have a studio and want to know how the market looks like, please check that out. You can also download the 2024 report to check out for the 2 years. Okay, awesome. And just to back up what Binyam said, Africa is a 90% mobile continent. This is because they are more accessible, more affordable, and a large majority of the population will have mobiles as opposed to PC. So that's the medium that most people use, and that's why we have more mobile games being produced, because they can reach more of the masses as opposed to PC. Okay, awesome. If we don't have any other questions, that will be all. Thank you so much, Binyam, and congratulations on your game. We'll go and check out the rest of the games that you have created and all.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so just before we close, we have a couple of announcements and opportunities that you may want to look into. But first, give us feedback, right? Let us know what you think of this event. Let us know the kind of speakers that you'd want to see. If you have a particular field in the game industry that you want to get more insight on, or a company that you'd want us to invite somebody from, please scan the link. I'm also going to share a link in the chat that you can just click on to give feedback. All right, there we go. This is going to run for 2 minutes. And as you do that, we have an upcoming program, the Malia Games Junior Internship, which is a 2-week immersive program for kids aged 10 to 14. And it's meant to give them an experience of what it's like to work at a game studio. They'll spend this 2 weeks with us at the Malia Games HQ in Lagos, Nigeria, and they will be exposed to learning what game design is. They'll get to prototype their games and showcase their games like real developers, which gives them an early exposure to understanding what games feel like and what working in an actual game industry would look like. This exposes them early and gives them more choices as they try to choose their careers. So if you know any person in Lagos, any parents whose children might be interested, or teachers whose students might be interested in this program, please share it with them. They can check it out on our website at malio.com/junior internship. All the details are there, and they can get to apply for their kids. And that is all from us this month. We will see you in June. We have the Summer Game Jam coming up in June, so we won't have a meetup then, but we will have a game jam. So get ready. We'll announce a theme and we will create a game in 7 days. Thank you for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye. We have a question: can other countries attend too? If they're able to be in Lagos by the time the program runs, then that is okay, right? But the program is run in person, it's not virtual. So the requirement is that you need to be able to be in Lagos during the program, which is July 7th to 18th. All right, thanks everyone. Enjoy your week. Bye-bye.